Good morning and welcome to the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. I'm Brendan Rendo with the Homes in Orlando team. Unfortunately, Joe can't be with us this week. He's actually up in Washington, D.C. at a congressional meeting. Not sure what he's talking about. Maybe the assault and the junk fees that the current administration is coming out after, or it could be the title fees that they're currently coming after, or it could be the real estate commissions that they're currently coming after. Ever feel like you're being attacked from all sides? That's kind of the real estate market right now. Uh, frustrating, frustrating to say the least. And this week just continued the frustration as Jerome Powell on Tuesday actually came out and said the quiet part out loud that we've been saying, quite honestly, for several months now, in that they're not going to cut rates. They're just, there's nothing in the economic data that they're producing. Key there is they're producing that would warrant the reduction in the Fed overnight rate. And he actually came right out and said it. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said on Tuesday the central bank might need to keep rates higher for longer than previously thought as inflation remains high or elevated, excuse me. So looking at that really hit the market hard this week. And you can see it in the 10-year Treasury. We had a bump last week to roughly around 4.5% when the inflation numbers came out. And then when Jerome made his statement, the 10-year Treasury took another hit. And what that's doing is it's continuing to force the interest rates, mortgage rates up. And currently, right now, your mortgage rates on a 30-year note with really 720 plus credit score, that's 5% down, regular program. You're looking somewhere in that 7.5% range. So again, over the past several weeks, buyers have seen that their purchasing power continues to be cut. And my gut feeling is at some point something's got to break, is going to break the dam, because we're seeing the rates go up, incomes aren't going up. You've got to earn 1.5 times the median income in a zip code to be able to afford the average home in the zip code. There's nothing that's going to push rates down. There just isn't. So you've got people who are in their homes again at the 3%, 3.5%. Even the baby boomers who want to downsize are looking at it going, do I really want to downsize my home? I've got a 3% interest rate on, say 3.5, 4, and go to a smaller house and end up with the same payment that I'm in currently now. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And something's got to break in the system. And at some point, I really think it's going to be prices as we go through the numbers and we continue to see the inventory growing. One thing that this has done is the residential construction, which everyone knows we're short on homes. There's not enough homes to go around, but we're seeing the starts actually fall. We've actually seen a drop last month to an annual rate of just over 1 million new homes being built. That's well below the level that we need to meet the demand. Well below the level that we need. And we're also seeing the permits that are declining. We saw this drop to 1.45 million from 1.52 million. So everything that the Fed wanted to do, because remember, anytime you do an increase in rates, it does take, sometimes 18 months or more to really feel it in the system. And we're now well over, I believe it's well over a year since the last rate increase. So everything that they're wanting to do as far as slowing the economy, as far as I can tell, it's working. Their, announcement that, layoffs beginning of this month have jumped tremendously. I was talking to one of my clients who actually does tax preparations, and a number of her discussions with people was they just got laid off. And these aren't factory workers. Many of these are high level executives who all of a sudden, middle management is being eliminated. The higher paying jobs are being cut. So then, we look at the NAHB Wells Fargo Housing Market Index. When you look at this index, when you're above 50%, that's considered good. When you're below 50%, not so great. And we're sitting right there after 4 months of increases. We've flattened out, absolutely flattened out. So going forward, you're looking at this, and what is everyone thinking? How is the market looking at everything? And you can see we track this. We go through this pretty much every week, and we're looking at the Fed funds. When do people actually expect this to be cut? And right now, you can see, I mean, May completely off the board. Last week or yesterday, even you had 94%. This is now jumped to 99. So May's off the board. It's gone. And then we come in, we look at June, and you're seeing the same thing is people who really felt, June was the time frame. June was the time frame. And that now really at 84.7%, it's off the board. That's not going to happen. So then your next meeting, they skip July and August. Then your next meeting's in September. And you're starting to see where September is starting to shift. To more people are feeling that we're not going to do the rate increase. Still got a higher level of optimism, 46% feeling that we're going to get our first quarter point rate cut in September. May happen for one reason and one reason only: politics. That's it. You're going into the election in November. Things stay tight through the summer. We really start to see the unemployment numbers increase. You start to see maybe inflation come down a little bit. Then and only then may we actually see our first rate cut. But at that time, really kind of too late to affect anything with the election. And then you kind of know it's all based on politics. It's just all based on politics. But then as we go into the end of the year, November and even December, where we had more people feeling that we'd be down weeks ago at the 450 basis point range, you're seeing most people are saying that we're going to have one rate cut. That's it, just one rate cut. So now when we're looking at the housing market, we really got to start looking at, okay, our rates very well could stay, depending on where the 10-year treasury goes, could pretty much stay in that 7% range to 7.5%, could pop to 8%. And I think the major factor that could see us jump to 8% is the amount of deficit spending that this administration is doing. It's just tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And the more debt they create, the higher the rates are going to go, because people don't want the debt. There's been numerous articles over the past several weeks, Jamie Dimon, Jerome Powell, other economists coming out saying, hey, get your fiscal house in some freaking order, will you? Because we can't carry this debt. This debt right now is, I believe it's about 38 to 40% of the actual income we generate before we borrow anything that we generate to the treasury right now is used to service the debt. And why is that? It's because we've gone from basically, slightly over 1% interest charge to nearly on a 10-year, if you want to generate a 10-year bond, at 4.6. And what this treasury is doing is they're generating all short-term debt. It's all short-term, 2-year, 10-year, 5-year. So in order to be able to sell this stuff, you've got to jump up the rates to make it attractive. And that's going to continuously hurt the housing market. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you can see what they're doing and you know how it's not a new rodeo. We've been here before. And we know what we need to do. But you don't have anybody in Washington with a backbone. Bunch of wusses. Someone at some point, I don't know who it's going to be, but someone's got to be a freaking adult in the room and actually tell people, no, we can't do this anymore. Time to be Americans. Time to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and realize, you know what? If we do this together over the next couple of years, maybe we can get ourselves back on track. But until you get people in Washington who aren't willing to pander to every group, every whiner out there, not going to happen. Not going to happen. And it's. I don't like seeing it. I don't like seeing it because I love what I do. I love putting people into houses, and I'm going to continue to do my job the best I can and work with Joe and work with others to provide and come up with solutions for people. That's what we do. That's our job overall. So let's hop into our numbers for the week. I apologize. Jump up here. And in Orlando for the week, we kind of held steady with our sales. 413 homes sold. And we saw a jump, which usually is kind of expected this time of year. Usually it's a little higher number. Usually you're up about 200, 250 new listings per week. And we're sitting about 94. So we're almost breaking the 6,000 inventory level for single family homes in Orlando. But then again, condo market, moving along slow, steady, truly underperforming with 122 per week and the inventory continuing to grow. Then we come in, look at the overall numbers, and we've held steady with months of inventory at 3.3 months of inventory. So that's good. That to me is neutral to starting to be a buyer's market right now. And we're seeing our original list sales price really starting to hold pretty steady at about 95% overall. And our days on market, pretty consistent in that 58, high 50s, low 60s days on market. And then looking at chart-wise sales price, you can see we really kind of set level, haven't really moved too much overall over the past several months, somewhere just above the 400 range to the mid 400s. We kind of go up and down every week, which, that's understandable. Then total actives, you can see here, after taking a dip at the end of December, when we kind of had a little decrease in interest rates, we actually started, leveled off, but over the past, springtime since beginning of March, slow but surely have started to increase the number of homes on the market. I think part of this is some seller frustration that, hey, at some point, I want to sell my house. I need to sell my house. And I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and figure out how to get this done and get it done profitably. Then we hop into Our condos, and you can see here our months of inventory for our condos sitting about 5.5 months. That is truly a buyer's market, truly a buyer's market. And our original list to sales price sitting around 95%. This has tightened up over the past couple months, and I think it's more to do again with the original list price coming down on the condos more than anything else. Is people are realizing I can't push. There's so much competition for condos on the market right now. I can't continuously push the numbers on them. I've got to, if I want to sell it, I've got to make it very competitive in order to sell my property. Then you see weekly sales. We've come back down after having a little peak in beginning of February, and then here's our just since January we're up nearly 17% on the inventory for condos. So that is continuing to grow, and as that continues to grow, you see the months of inventory continue to grow, and I think we're going to which depending on which condo complex you're looking at, you are seeing prices be more competitive. And I think that's going to continue to happen. I think the condo market, we're going to see price decreases sooner than we are in the single family homes right now, because you're still seeing new construction being built. You still see them providing incentives that are just very, very aggressive for the builders. Numerous builders provide, offering interest rates in the 4s and the 5s for people. And a lot of them are not just the 2 1s, but they're starting to look at, and I think it's because, you've got the Fed saying rates will be higher longer, but starting to look at, okay, let's do a permanent buy down for these clients. And if you're looking at the new construction, or even if you're looking at a home right now, I think that's one of the big things you got to look at is look at possibly, depending on what you can negotiate with closing costs, contributions, those types of items. If you've got the closing costs already, if we can get 3% from your seller, take that and use it to buy the rates down, because overall it's going to be cheaper. This whole philosophy of, marry the house, date the rate. Never liked it, never bought into it. Think it's a crock, because what they never tell you is, oh yeah, just refinance. Well, there's a cost to refinancing. There's a cost to everything. So if I can get my seller to buy down the rate half a point, 3/4 of a point, or if I'm fortunate, a full point, that's money I don't have to spend in a year to 2 years down the road to get the lower rate that I'm at now. Just makes up to me, it makes a lot more sense. And with this market slowing, the pool, if you're a buyer, you're a big fish in a little pool right now. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of it. If you don't like the deal, walk away. That's the first conversation I have with all my clients, all my buyers. If you don't like the deal, walk away. Walk away. There will always be another house, but you've got to feel good, and you've got to feel that you're getting your value for your money. And with the pool of buyers continuously shrinking, the more their interest rates go up, the more advantage you have. Take advantage of it. Use it in your negotiations. Well, take care. Thank you for joining me today. And Joe will be back next week. And please like and subscribe, and join us every week on the Orlando Real Estate Buzz. Take care.